If Mark Levin is calling the Trump administration anti-Semitic, Steve Witkoff, we're at the end of something and the beginning of something new.
All these years later, you either have to apologize for your role in this catastrophe or defend your role in this catastrophe and talk about how you still really believe it was the right thing to do. But you can't sit here and say you're not an expert and you're a Jew hater if you say the word neoconservative.
If you're calling Steve Witkoff an anti-Semite on Twitter, you're losing, right?
That loser Tucker Carlson is referring to is conservative talk show host Mark Levin, a well-known neoconservative lunatic whose foreign policy preferences have fallen out of vogue among Republican voters in recent years, for good reason. And while I find their rejection of the warmongers who dragged our young American soldiers into multiple Middle East deployments commendable, Levin certainly doesn't agree with me. After all, the loudmouth hog was, and still is, a neocon. A disgusting, bloviating one at that. Levin has never been shy about cheerleading for US military intervention in the Middle East on behalf of Israel. In fact, he's demanding we go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel right now. So it should come as no surprise that Levin didn't appreciate that Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff cited neoconservatives in a critical fashion while expressing his interest in diplomatic solutions to foreign conflicts.
The neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interest of the United States government, and I believe in that too.
In response to Witkoff's statement, Levin did what the right often criticizes the left for doing. He weaponized identity to shut down criticism that he doesn't like. In an X post that, of course, included the video featuring Witkoff's statements about neoconservatives, Levin declared that neocon is a pejorative for Jew and ended his comments with an unbelievable. The only thing that's unbelievable is that Levin tried to play the anti-Semitic card. Plus, he was wrong to do so. He's wrong in his statement. Neocon has just become a dirty word because no one likes them, which is why Levin's weaponized social media declaration was met with a community note that just simply reads, a neocon is not a pejorative for someone who is Jewish. Yeah. Now, before I go off on neocon scum that absolutely have blood on their hands, I just want to take a moment to weigh in on Steve Witkoff. The real estate developer was chosen by Trump back in November of 2024 to be his incoming administration's special envoy to the Middle East, which, to be quite honest with you guys, was concerning because Witkoff had no diplomatic experience. And with the war on Gaza raging, honestly, I expected the worst from Witkoff. But I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he began playing a key role in negotiating a ceasefire and hostage exchange between Israel and Hamas even before Trump was inaugurated for his second term. Witkoff's approach was unconventional considering that Israel was part of the equation. According to the Wall Street Journal, Witkoff sat down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and reminded him of all the favors Trump carried out for Israel in his first term, including the recognition of Jerusalem as the Israeli capital and Israel's sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights. Then Witkoff told the Israeli leader that the president has been a great friend of Israel, and now it's time to be a friend back. He then played hardball, telling the prime minister that he needed to allow Israel's ceasefire negotiators to make decisions, and that if Netanyahu didn't want to work that way, everyone should just pack their bags and go home. What's the point? He also was similarly tough with the Arab side of the deal. Just a day earlier in Doha, Qatar, Witkoff told them it was time for an agreement, not endless diplomatic back and forth. So immediately after the meeting, Netanyahu sent a key aide and the heads of Israel's spy agencies to Doha for an intense week of negotiations that brought a deal which had been moribund just weeks earlier back into play. Both Hamas and Israel agreed to the first round of the deal, which would bring dozens of hostages home and stop the unbearable bloodshed for 6 weeks. Witkoff even flew to Israel on January 29th and made a rare entry into Gaza to personally oversee the ceasefire. Now, during this time, there was also an increased flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, which of course Israel had purposely been blocking throughout the entirety of the war. Because of that deal that Witkoff helped broker, Hamas released 33 hostages, which is 33 more than Israel was able to free through their genocidal war on Gazans. It was also nice to see a change from the Biden-Harris administration, which of course made repeated public statements about how they were pressuring Israel to end the war. In reality, they were doing no such thing. Former Israeli ambassador Michael Herzog told Israeli press that God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was the president during this period. We fought in Gaza for over a year and the administration never came to us and said ceasefire now. It never did. And that's not to be taken for granted. I don't take it for granted, I'll never forget. Even Obama official Ben Rhodes excoriated the Biden administration's handling of the war.
It was a choice for the United States to unreservedly back what Israel did for that whole year. That was a choice. It wasn't something that happened because of gravity. It wasn't something that happened because politics inevitably means you support Israel unconditionally. Joe Biden made a choice to provide unconditional military support to this Israeli government and this military operation. And just mouthing words of concern about the scale of loss of life doesn't matter. You made that choice.
But look, we didn't even need Michael Herzog's admission about the Biden administration to know that there was no pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire. Because guess what? We have eyes. We can see. There were never any brakes on that car. Unfortunately, though, that didn't stop Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from delivering one of the most embarrassing lines of her career during the Democratic National Convention last year.
She is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
Was she really? Kamala Harris was working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire? No, she wasn't. The fact that Harris was literally traversing the campaign trail with Liz neocon Cheney in tow should have been a major red flag. AOC chose to ignore it in order to ingratiate herself with the same Democrats that she was elected to fight back against. Anyway, getting back to the fate of the ceasefire Witkoff helped secure, a real estate developer helped secure, Israel went back to intentionally starving Palestinians trapped in Gaza by March 2nd. Because guess what? Benjamin Netanyahu had no interest in moving forward with the second phase of the ceasefire deal and decided to propose a brand new plan in which Hamas would release hostages in exchange for extending the truce for another 50 days. But it wouldn't bring the war to an end. And look, Netanyahu knew Hamas wouldn't accept the altered deal, and that was the whole point. Now we know, without a shadow of a doubt, that Israel always intended to expand its military operation to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from the Gaza Strip using American bombs that we taxpayers are forced to pay for even as we get crushed by inflation and poor economic conditions. It's disgusting. Additionally, Israel and its allies have been trying to remove Witkoff from the Trump administration, including Mark Levin, who tried to call Witkoff, a Jewish individual, by the way, an anti-Semite. Here's more screeching from the dead-eyed loser who wants to send your kids to fight Israel's war in Iran.
It's filled with terrorists and terrorist regimes. Americans do not like Iran and the regime that runs it. They're terrorists. They keep threatening to destroy us and our friends, the Israelis. I speak for Christians and Jews and others alike. This is the view of the American people. That's number one. Americans hate Hamas. We hate terrorists, butchers, Nazis. We hate men that kill babies.
I mean, Levin's right. I hate terrorists. Speaking of which, how many babies have been killed by your beloved Israeli government, Levin? Far more than Hamas has killed. Tens of thousands of children have been slaughtered by the IDF during this current round of war. Volunteer American doctors in Gaza came back home and spoke of the dozens of babies who were killed by Israeli snipers. They showed up to the hospital with freaking bullet holes in their heads. 2-year-olds. And we're just supposed to accept that and rally the troops for a brutal war with Iran? Nah. Even before Levin accused Witkoff of being an anti-Semite, Douglas Murray scoffed at Dave Smith's use of the moniker neoconservative during their debate, if you can call it that, on Joe Rogan's podcast.
If we just went in because there was this uprising in 2011 and because we were worried that Gaddafi was about to go genocidal, something that the UK Parliament did an investigation into and found out said was just completely wrong. But why is it then that I got 4-star General Wesley Clark, Supreme Commander of the NATO forces? Why is it that he told me that he saw the plans in 2001 to overthrow Gaddafi, and that this was part of a strategy to overthrow 7 governments in 5 years, and all of them except one have been done at this point? So you're telling me it's a complete coincidence that he saw that the neoconservatives had this plan to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi, and then 10 years later we happen to do it when we have the opportunity? The two aren't related at all?
First, it's nice to hear the N word again.
The N word? Did I say that?
Conservatives.
Oh, that one. I was thinking of a different one. Okay.
God, that is embarrassing. Murray amounting neoconservative to the N word is hilarious because he literally wrote a book titled Neoconservatism, Why We Need It. I'm not kidding. Here it is. You can see a photo of it. I mean, I think it was published in 2006 when neoconservatism hadn't fallen out of favor, by the way, among the Republican base. But honestly, to Republican voters' credit, they were able to accept the fact that the American people were lied to by the neoconservatives within the Bush administration, that Iraq never had weapons of mass destruction, that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, that we were totally tricked by the neoconservatives in the George W. Bush administration to strike Iraq in a preemptive war that was a complete and utter freaking disaster. Equating neocon with the N-word was Murray's way of signaling that anyone speaking out against the horrific death, destruction, and war crimes neocons cheerlead in the Middle East should be condemned. It's Murray's way of silencing his opposition, which, much to his chagrin, he's failing at. I'm amused by it. But I assume the family members of the 4,419 American troops who died in Iraq on behalf of Israel's desires to go to war with Iraq have their own views on neoconservatives. The problem for folks like Murray and Levin is that the cat's out of the bag. We know too much. Smith clearly knows too much. Levin and Murray can't defend the indefensible, so they just start attacking those with legitimate critique of, whatever. They're anti-Semites. They don't know what they're doing. They've never been. They're not experts. But it would be great if they were pressured to contend with reality, as Smith brought up while talking to Tucker Carlson.
Anybody can read for themselves the clean break memo. It was written by Richard Pearl and David Wormser to Benjamin Netanyahu that was like, look, here is our plan. And the break was from the peace process. The break was from Oslo. And they go, look, here's the plan. You know how Yitzhak Rabin and all these liberal Jews are saying we have to make peace with the Palestinians so that we can then make peace with the broader Arab world? Well, no, we got a new plan. We're gonna break with all of that. We're not doing this land swap thing. We're not giving the Palestinians a state. What we'll do is we'll have America overthrow all of these other governments. That way you never have to make peace with the Palestinians and you can just enjoy domination over the region. But all these years later, you either have to like apologize for your role in this catastrophe or defend your role in this catastrophe and talk about how you still really believe it was the right thing to do. But you can't sit here and say you're not an expert and you're a Jew hater if you say the word neoconservative.
Smith is right. And the substance of what he's saying should be addressed. I mean, Iraq, Syria, Libya, the list goes on. Also, what I would love to know is whether Murray or Levin think Trump is some sort of anti-Semite, given the statements he himself made during his speech in Saudi Arabia just yesterday.
It's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
Now look, I'm not a sucker. I know that Donald Trump forms his opinions and his policy based on who bribed him last. And Qatar and Saudi Arabia are working overtime at the moment. And you add the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is an unsavory, unlikable piece of crap, you can kind of understand why Trump is kind of changing his tune in regard to foreign policy in the Middle East. Now, finally, Tucker Carlson himself used to be a raging neoconservative. And guess what? Now he surprisingly expresses a great deal of remorse that used to be the case.
I mean, I spent my whole life in cable news. It, obviously is in terminal decline. I had all kinds of views that I argued for passionately that were totally wrong. I admitted it. I gained perspective and humility in admitting it. It's the only act of liberation that's really possible in this life, is freeing yourself from like the lies. And the number one lie is I'm God.
Yeah.
And like I'm omniscient or was perfectly wise person, whatever. It's like, you make mistakes. You're a ridiculous primate.
We are ridiculous primates, some more ridiculous than others. But credit where credit is due. Not many people change their worldview based on new information. They usually just attack the messenger instead. Smith, Tucker, and anyone else on the right side of the political aisle who loathes neocons are right to do so, and they deserve credit for it. Hopefully, the Democratic Party wisens up, ditches the Cheneys, and realizes that no one likes a neocon, other than Israel and its allies.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.